Hello, crafty friends. It's Nikki here with Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Today we're going to make a burlap pull-through wreath, perfect for beginners. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, please do so now. Lots of crafty videos coming your way. Be sure to give a thumbs up to this video. The supplies that you'll need for this wreath will be one 14-inch wire wreath frame from the Dollar Tree, 2 rolls of 5.5-inch wide burlap. These are purchased from Walmart, but you can grab them anywhere. A handful of 6.5-inch zip ties, a good pair of scissors, and your choice of wired ribbon to make a bow for your wreath at the end of this video. Let's get started. So how we're going to begin this wreath, just a couple of pointers. There are 4 metal rings around your wreath frame, and we're only going to be working with the inner 2 rings. So we won't be using the outer ring or the inner ring, just those inner 2. Go ahead and lay both of your rolls, we'll be using them simultaneously, down onto your work table, and go ahead and cut off those first couple of inches where you've got that heart crease. Lay both of your rolls of burlap side by side so that the roll is pulling from the bottom. And the first thing that we need to do, friends, is get this burlap anchored to a crossbar. So we need to get our burlap in place, and remember we're going to use the inner 2 metal rings, and we're going to run our burlap as we pull it through simultaneously. So grab your first roll of burlap, and you're going to actually, from the bottom side of your metal wreath frame, pull the burlap up so that it's hugging one of those inner rings. So slide one end on one side, grab the other end and pull it up through on the other side so it's hugging that middle wire, and keep a hold of it. And then we're going to grab our second roll of burlap and do the exact same thing. Before we grab that other roll, friends, let's talk real quickly about how this pull-through method actually works. It's easier to see with just the one roll of burlap here. So essentially, for the entire wreath, it's just lots of repetitive movements. It'll take you about 45 minutes to an hour, but the entire time you're going to be doing the exact same movement. And so what you do is you keep your burlap pulled up over that wire rung on your metal wreath frame, and you're pulling it up towards the ceiling and then gathering it in your hand and pulling it to the right. And you're just going to continue to do this. You'll be doing it with both rolls at the same time. I'll show you how that looks in just a minute. So you're going to be pulling and gathering, pulling and gathering, pulling and gathering, and the tension from the tightness of the burlap within the wreath frame is actually what holds it in place. So let's get the second piece of burlap pulled up and through, and we'll get those anchored down to hold them in place. So just like you did before, friends, grab that second roll of burlap, pull it over the other inner metal ring. Make sure all of those edges are aligned and meeting at the top. And then we're going to grab one of our 6-inch pipe cleaners, and you're going to stick it through the weave of your burlap. It goes through real easy. And then you're going to anchor that to your crossbar. I could have used one of the zip ties to anchor both pieces at the same time, but I didn't realize that until after the fact. So I in fact used 2, one for each piece of burlap. So again, you're pulling your burlap up and tight over that rung, sticking that pipe cleaner through the burlap around the crossbar, and then cinching it down to anchor down your burlap. Once you get your burlap anchored down to the crossbar and zip tied securely, go ahead and trim off the tails of your zip ties. It's time to start pulling the burlap up and through. So remember, make sure both of your rolls, so essentially 4 pieces because you've got 4 edges, are always aligned with one another. And you're going to just take your right hand, pull the burlap up and towards the ceiling, keeping it taut against that crossbar and gathering it. Pull and gather, pull and gather, pull and gather. What I found works easiest for me, friends, is to use one hand as the stabilizing hand and the other hand to make sure that those pieces of burlap are always aligned. You basically want to keep checking that throughout the entire time of making that wreath because you always want those edges to be aligned at the top so that your wreath doesn't get squirrely or have pieces that are, too short or too long. You want to keep that consistency and uniformity. So with my right hand, I'm stabilizing the burlap, and with my left hand, I'm pulling it in so that you've constantly got that pulling and gathering method. And you also want to remember to keep that burlap taut and pull towards the ceiling. As you can see here, friends, I'm just continually checking the height of those edges and making sure they're all aligned with one another. With my left hand, it's a constant check as I pull that burlap up and through and around those metal rungs. To keep that uniformity and consistency. And then I'm just pulling and gathering. So those are basically the only steps. Getting the burlap fed through, making sure all 4 edges align, and pulling taut. Now that I've completed one section, you can see how this comes together nicely. Let's just keep working our way through, friends. When you hit those crossbars, you'll just continue to use the same method. You can just skip right over it with ease. Keep gathering. All right, crafty friends, we are near the end of this wreath. Once you realize that you're down to just a handful of pulls left until you're finished, go ahead and cut both rolls of burlap off and then finish pulling up that last bit up and through your wreath frame. Okay, now the burlap has been completely pulled through, and the very last step is to secure that burlap down with our zip ties. And again, I'm just using one for this tail end. So just like at the beginning, friends, you're going to use that zip tie to run it through the weave of your burlap and anchor it down to one of the crossbars. And last but not least, go ahead and if you've got any poofs of burlap that are just sticking out unnecessarily on the back side of your wreath frame, shove them up and through so that it's nice and firm, and your wreath is totally done. The last step, if you'd like, is to add a super cute decorative bow. I'm going to go ahead and add a bow to my wreath. If you need support with making a bow, go ahead and click on my bow making tutorial. You'll find that on my channel, friends. So I always use a wired ribbon, and I'm going to go ahead and use the Bow Dabra to help me make this bow. Here's the ribbon choices that I've chosen, a couple of 2.5-inch ribbons and a couple of 1.5-inch ribbons. I actually didn't end up using the polka dotted ribbon, but let's get this bow made. Once you have your bow made, go ahead and grab a piece of floral wire, wrap that around the center of your bow, and that's what we'll use to attach it to your wreath. You're just going to add your bow anywhere you'd like on your wreath, run that floral wire right through the burlap, and attach it to 2 of the crossbars on the back of your wreath. Use a pair of good scissors or some wire snips to trim off that extra bit of floral wire. Once you get that trimmed off, go ahead and kind of curl it down and tuck it into the burlap so that it doesn't scratch your door. Now that your bow has been firmly attached with your floral wire, go ahead and fluff out your loops and lay your tails where you'd like them to be. I always start with the bottom loops and work my way up. You can just use your hand to fluff out those loops any way you'd like. That is the beauty of wired ribbon. So get your bow fluffed out and your tails laying where you'd like. Go ahead and grab your scissors and dovetail those tails. I always like to trim them down at varying lengths. I feel like that just gives it an extra bit of cuteness and sass. And remember, friends, if you need help with bow making, which includes how to dovetail and the different variety of ways to trim down your ribbon tails, just hop on over to that bow making video on my channel. This burlap wreath turned out super cute. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you'll be making one yourself soon. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel, friends, and hit that bell. Happy crafting!